Martinez,
Here.
Commissioner Diaz, Commissioner Sanchez absent.
Okay, we have quorum. All commissioners are here except for Commissioner Sanchez, which will be joining us soon. Vice Chair Lua, can you lead us to the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Vice Chair Lua.
Welcome.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I motion.
A second.
Oh, I third.
Okay, thank you, that's two. At this time on the agenda is decorum and order. Mr. City Attorney, can you please read the decorum and order?
Thank you, Chair. Lloyd Pilchin, speaking remotely. This is just to remind the members of the public that this is a public meeting. The Planning Commission is here to do the city's business. So we ask that all members of the public observe rules of decorum. The Planning Commission follows the rules of decorum of the City Council, which means that any disruptive behavior may result in the sergeant at arms removing the person from the room and barring them from the meeting. So let's have a good meeting, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And if I may, Chair, we had a motion, we had a first and a second, but we just need to do roll call, if you don't mind, to approve the agenda.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Chair Solorio,
Yes.
Vice Chair Lua,
Yes.
Commissioner Martinez,
Yes.
Commissioner Diaz,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanchez is absent.
Okay. Next on the agenda is public statements. There will be an opportunity to speak on the public hearing items during the public hearing for each. Madam Commission Secretary, do we have any public statements this evening?
No, we don't have any public statements.
Okay. So the first item on the agenda is a consideration to approve Planning and Preservation Commission meeting minutes for April 14th, 2025.
Have a motion.
I second.
Oh, we need a motion, so I motion.
We need two.
Are we?
No, we need two votes. So you motion
think
and
he-
you second?
And I second, okay, yes.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Martinez,
Yes.
Commissioner Diaz,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanchez is absent, Vice Chair Lua,
Yes.
and Chair Solorio.
Yes. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is administrative reports. Presentation on the California Environmental Quality Act. Do we have a presentation today?
Yes, thank you. To provide this presentation, we have Ron Garcia, our planning manager.
Good evening, Chair, members of the Commission. Tonight's presentation is understanding the California Environmental Quality Act. Tonight, this presentation is going to be a high-level overview of the understanding of how we process projects under the Act in the state of California. So what is CEQA? CEQA was enacted in 1970, and it was signed into law by Governor Reagan. It was modeled after the National Environmental Policy Act, which is often referred to as NEPA. And the general purpose ensures state and local agencies assess and mitigate environmental impacts, and also promotes transparency and public participation in decision-making. And above all, what CEQA does is it's a process in which it informs decision makers and the public about the possible environmental impacts of that decision. And also, it's important to note that CEQA is part of our daily workflow as planning staff, as we make CEQA determinations with all forms, including contracts, development, are some of those actions. Here we go. So when does CEQA not apply? And so there's three general distinctions. One is ministerial, and I'm going to go into detail a little later in the presentation. And one of them is ministerial action, which is essentially is no real decision by the agency or the city, no possibility of significant environmental effects, and lastly, projects that are rejected or denied by the city or public agency. So CEQA process overview. If the city determines that a proposed project is a project under CEQA, it will usually take the following three steps. Number one, it determines whether the project falls under a statutory or categorical exemption from CEQA. Two, if the project is not exempt, to prepare an initial study to determine whether the project might result in significant environmental impacts. And third is to prepare a negative declaration or a mitigative negative declaration or an EIR, depending on what the initial study determines in that document. And again, this is just an overview of what I'm going to go over in detail in the presentation. So the flow chart here in this slide clearly illustrates the CEQA process, outlining what's contemplated by the CEQA guidelines. Number one, the public agency, as mentioned, it determines whether the activity is a project. And if the project isn't determined as a project, no further action is required under CEQA. Then it moves on. If the public agency then determines that if it is exempt under CEQA, then there's three designations, one of them being ministerial action, statutory, or a categorical exemption. And then lastly, if during the review of the projects it's determined that there is possible significant effects, then a higher level review is required, and that consists of a negative declaration or a mitigated negative declaration, and lastly, which is the highest review, is an environmental impact report. And just to go over in detail, discretionary versus ministerial. So CEQA is bound by all all discretionary actions. And those discretionary actions consist of subdivision maps, conditional use permits, zone changes, general plan amendments, and overall policy documents like specific plans, one of them being, for example, like a downtown specific plan or a master plan. And then there are ministerial actions, which normally are actions that don't go, are not presented before the Planning Commission, which include permits such as those that get given, that are issued at the counter, including demolition permits and building permits. So when those projects are determined to be exempt, there are two types of exemptions. One of them statutory, and that is granted by the legislature. And the examples of those are specific projects, emergency projects, even if it has a potential to significantly affect the environment, and most notably, statutory exemptions, one of them being the 1984 Olympics. Again, those are granted by the legislature. The other is categorical exemption, which is considered to have little or no impact. And those examples consist of, within the CEQA guidelines, existing facilities, replacement, reconstruction, small structures, inspections, accessory structures. It's important to note that as part of the one of the categories of a categorical exemption, that is the realm that that the Planning Commission normally sees with Planning Commission items coming before you. A couple of those examples that I was able to review over the past couple of months that came before the Planning Commission. One of them was a conditional use permit for an ABC license for Mariscos Los Toxicos. Another one was a conditional use permit for a warehouse. And under those CEQA determinations was a existing facilities categorical exemption. Another was a site plan review for a minor alteration of a sign. And then the other, this is a policy document. This is an ordinance, and it was a repeal and replace of the zoning code that just recently was approved by the City Council, and also was recommended by the Planning Commission for council approval. The other is a Class 32 infill exemption. And to apply a Class 32 infill exemption, most recently, this was the Brand project. This was a 12-unit housing development that came before the Planning Commission. And to apply a Class 32 infill exemption, you have to, one, confirm that the project complies with the general plan, the zoning code, and also that there isn't any impacts related to water quality, air quality, noise, and traffic. So when it's determined that an initial study is done, this is a higher level. So now we're moving on from projects being determined as an exemption. Now we move on to initial studies. So if the project does not fall under the exemption, the city must determine what type of document to prepare. And with that being, with that document includes the preparation of an initial study to determine whether there may be, and this is really important, whether there may be a significant environmental impact. And that's where the preparation of a notice, not a notice, a negative declaration, or a mitigated negative declaration, or an EIR is drafted. And I'll go over those in detail in the next slides. So the level of review for a negative declaration, if the initial study concludes that the project will not cause a significant effect on the environment, the city can then prepare a negative declaration. Either there's no impact or there isn't a significant impact. A negative declaration, again, is a written statement that an EIR is not required because a project will not have a significant adverse impact on the environment. If the initial study determines that there are mitigation measures that need to be, that there are impacts, then a mitigated negative declaration is then warranted. And here the city may attach conditions to a negative declaration for the purpose of mitigated potential environmental impacts. This is referred to as mitigated negative declaration. And just to give you an example, MNDs, they're often referred to, consists of aesthetics, biological resources, lighting, cultural resources, and tribal cultural resources. So mitigation measures are placed as part of the mitigated negative, the MND. So that way there's measures placed if, for example, there is a tribal cultural resource, that there are mitigation measures to follow if it is, in fact, during construction of the project that tribal resources are found, that they take the necessary and correct steps to protect those resources. In my experience, as in processing mitigative negative declarations, one of the requirements in processing that level of environmental review requires what's AB compliance with AB 52, which is cultural uh, consultation. There it is. So that requires a 30-day review with those tribes that have notified the city that they would like to be notified of the project. And so the city, as a lead agency, will consult with the tribe to go over the specifics of the project. And then the tribe would then provide mitigation measures. One of the most common ones that you hear in development when consulting with the tribes is they require a monitor. So before any grading, before the project can be disturbed, they require an on-site monitor to be on site to be able to witness during excavation. So that way, if there is any protected cultural resources, that they go through that process. And usually that's at the cost of the developer. So just a brief overview on the process for an NDMND process. So one is a notice of intent is issued for the project. It's a 20 or 30-day public review period where that document, once it's drafted, it's released to the public for any comment. As part of the NDMND, depending on that process, no public hearing is necessary under CEQA, but most of the time it is tied to a project, which therefore would go before the Planning and Preservation Commission for consideration, which would include comments received during that time period as part of the record. And then finally, that project approval that comes before the Planning Commission. Once the Planning Commission makes a determination, in this case for approval, then staff will then go ahead and issue a notice of determination for the project as approval. And that also includes, again, as part of the mitigative negative declaration process. There we go. So an EIR. An EIR is the highest level of environmental analysis. It's circulated 30 days to 45 days in order to respond to comments. There's variations of EIRs. There's also what's called a programmatic EIR. And that highest level of EIR is a very lengthy process. That process for an EIR, we're looking out for a year. I was looking up to see when the last EIR that was done for the city recently. I could not find one that was recently done. But at some point, the Planning Commission, depending on the level of project, could warrant the preparation of an EIR document. And in conclusion, just to summarize what was presented is it's important to note that CEQA is essential for protecting California's environment. Two, it balances development and environmental responsibility. And third, important to note, because there's always ongoing discussion about improving the process of CEQA. Again, as I mentioned, it's a very lengthy process. It's a costly process. And that call for improving that process is at the legislature level. So you'll hear in the news, you'll most likely hear about this at Planning Commissioners Academy, where there is discussion on how CEQA can be revised so that way it streamlines development in general, not only for housing development, but for just development in general. Because when you add the environmental CEQA compliance factor, it adds a lot of time, and again, it's costly. You'll hear discussions on comparison from California development to development in Arizona and other parts of the country on how development works much faster than it is in California. So you'll hear that, you'll hear it in the news, but you'll at some point we'll hear that debate take place. And lastly, just as a reminder, during the onboarding as planning commissioners, as part of your planning commission handbook, I recommend whenever you have free time, there's a planning commissioner's handbook that's online, and just to keep be informed of what's currently going on in CEQA. You can find current legal issues, housing laws, and there are other community engagement material on there that I would highly recommend that you visit on your downtime. That will help in understanding CEQA. There's a lot of great information in there. There's terminology, there's acronyms, and just to familiarize yourself with that process helps greatly as you see development projects come before you for consideration. So that concludes the staff's presentation. I'd be more than happy to answer any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia.
And Chair, if I may, just
yeah.
to, for the record, I just want to announce Commissioner Sanchez arrived at 5:53.
Thank you. So it's now time for commissioner questions and comments. Commissioner Martinez, do you have any questions?
No.
Commissioner Diaz, any questions?
Kind of, yeah. A question that I do have is you actually kind of explained it already, where that we haven't had any in the past, I guess, what, 20, 30 years, that no environmental actual report, right? The impact report, we haven't done one here for the city, right? No project has been big enough for that, or meets the parameters for that, right?
No, I just, as of recent.
Oh,
the most recent example that you would be familiar with, you would recall, is the adoption of the housing element. That was the certification of the mitigative negative declaration for the adoption of this current housing element cycle.
I think Commissioner Diaz meant an EIR, right? Is that what you were
So,
referring to?
That was the most recent, but I could not see, it could have been years past, but I'm gonna continue to
Okay.
look
No,
to
just,
see when an EIR was last adopted by the city.
all right, thank you.
Commissioner Lua,
No questions.
Commissioner Sanchez?
Thank you. I'm sorry, I was driving, so I didn't hear the entire presentation, but there was one question that I had in mind, and that is that I am assuming that we are going to hear a lot about this as we progress in this project for the train tracks, the project that Metro has, right? Is CEQA going to be very involved in this as far as what we need to learn, how we need to approach this project?
So that's important to note. I'm not familiar with the project on the train tracks, but the lead agency would not be
Metro.
the city, but it would be Metro. So they would undergo a very similar process in which the city undergoes with compliance with CEQA. So Metro, as being the lead agency, would undergo that process. And there will be a process of public comment. So that's when the city has an opportunity to provide comment based on the draft environmental documents that are prepared, which most likely in this case would probably be an EIR for that effort.
Oh, so that's not something that the city of San Fernando will be involved as far as doing this process, right? It will come directly, already completed for us to review? Maybe not us, but council?
So when, if I can just, I can answer that question for you. So when another agency is the lead agency, so for example, in this case, it's Metro, the city will receive notification that there's an EIR being prepared, and then we'll be able to respond. And so the city will be able to provide comments to that EIR and then have them as part of the document But we're not the lead agency where we wouldn't be doing the reporting, or I'm sorry, the analysis and filing with the state.
Thank you. That was my only question.
Thank you. I don't have any questions, but thank you for the presentation. Very informative. So, yeah, CEQA presentation received and filed. And then the next item is General Commission member comments and updates. If you guys have any updates or comments, Commissioner Martinez,
No, no.
Commissioner Diaz,
No.
Mr. Lua,
No.
Commissioner Sanchez.
No.
Okay, yeah, I don't have any comments either. Thank you. You guys, you have any news for us?
Yes, if I may, just that our next scheduled Planning Commission meeting is on June 9th. At this time, we don't have any projects scheduled to come before the commission, so we were planning on having another topic. We were hoping to present on housing next. Again, just to try to provide the different topics that would have been included in the Planning Commissioners Academy Conference that we weren't able to meet the deadline to send folks to this year. But this coming fiscal year, we will be aware of that deadline and make sure that we submit before it's sold out. So that's the only item that we have on the June agenda so far, just to share that. Also, just to share that the zoning code repeal and replace was approved by the council on May 5th. And so it will come into effect June 5th. And so that is very exciting. It includes a lot of updates to our processes. And so it puts it into the code. We're updating forms and applications so that way we can inform residents more and be more transparent in our process. So we're really excited about that. It also includes standards for outdoor dining on private property, the landscape updates that we went over in our 2 workshops, as well as an update to the ADU section. So that is coming forth. And just wanted to remind everyone who's interested that there is a budget town hall tomorrow. It'll be virtual. And then for the budget, the Community Development Department will be presenting on the 19th. And so if you're interested in tuning in, but I will continue to keep you updated as we go through the budget process. Thank you.
Is that on YouTube or is it Zoom? You said virtual, so.
The town hall, they are on YouTube.
Thank you, Erica. So if that's it, then this meeting will now adjourn to its next regular meeting on June 9th. Thank you.